Today I want to talk about a pool chemical that causes a lot of confusion, and that's non-chlorine shock. Now, if you've ever seen a product called Chlorine-Free Shock and thought, great, and I can finally stop using chlorine, this is probably where a lot of people get tripped up, and it's understandable because it is called Chlorine-Free Shock. But replacing chlorine is not what this stuff does. What I'm holding here is an oxygen-based oxidizer. This one happens to be Aqueduct's Oxidizing Shock. I'm glad to see that they didn't call it Chlorine-Free Shock because it's a little less confusing, but it's the same thing. And no, they didn't sponsor the video. I didn't ask them to. I don't want it to turn into a commercial. That's really not why we're here. Today, I really just want to talk about this type of chemical, what it does, how it works, and whether you actually need it in your pool. Before we get there, though, if you like this kind of content, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. Let's start with the basics. Every time somebody gets into your pool, they bring in contaminants, body oils, lotions, sunscreens, whatever other type of nastiness they might have going on. If you're anything like me, you might actually be secretly sitting back, looking at them, kind of judging them, thinking, one might be bringing more nastiness than the other. Let me know down in the comments if you're secretly judging your guests by, the type of contaminants they might bring into your water. And I know you know what I'm talking about. There's always that one dude that has frosted himself like a cake with sunscreen, or that friend of a friend that you didn't actually invite, but they showed up with somebody that you did invite and don't want to embarrass, and they look like they haven't showered in 3 days. The point is, all of it ends up in your water. Even if your water looks crystal clear, those contaminants are still there. Normally, chlorine has two jobs. First, it sanitizes by killing bacteria and viruses, thank God. And second, it oxidizes contaminants in organic waste. In other words, all that nastiness. The point is that chlorine gets consumed in the process of breaking those things down. So when you have more contaminants or a heavy bather load that may or may not include an uninvited guest named Billy Ray who hasn't showered in 3 days, your free chlorine can get used up faster than normal, leaving you with more combined chlorine in the water. That's where a product like this comes in. Non-chlorine shock, or oxidizing shock as this one is called, contains what we call potassium peroxymonosulfate, also sometimes referred to as potassium monosulfate, or MPS. In either case, it's a powerful oxidizer that's reacting with contaminants that are already in the water, helping to reduce demand placed on chlorine. If you're watching the World Cup right now, think of this as fresh legs coming off the bench. It's helping your sanitizer, not replacing it. I guess technically the fresh legs coming off the bench in the World Cup are replacing other players, so probably not the best analogy, but you get my point. This stuff is helping your sanitizer when it needs it. With this product, I use 2 pounds in my pool. A pound is about 2 cups. This is a half cup, by the way, so 8 of these. I'm actually applying this with one of the only containers that my wife will allow me to use with pool chemicals, her empty cottage cheese containers. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear is people thinking that this replaces chlorine, and it doesn't. It's not a sanitizer, it's an oxidizer. If your free chlorine is low, this won't fix it. If you have algae, this won't fix it. What it does do is help break down swimmer waste and those chloramines, the compounds that contribute to that strong chlorine smell that you might often notice at public pools or hotel pools. I don't want to name any names because that smell, it's not a good thing. Ironically, that smell is usually a sign that chlorine is being overworked by contaminants, not that there's too much of it in the water. Now, a couple of pro tips, and we're not even going to call them pro tips because I'm not a pro. I'm just a guy on the internet that talks about pools. I happen to know a lot because I messed my own pool up quite a bit when I first got it, and it forced me to learn a lot about pools. That being said, that's why I like to share it with you so that you don't make the same mistakes and end up spending way too much money. One of the things to note about this product is that compared to traditional shocks, your re-entry time into the pool is much less. Obviously, you want to follow all label instructions, but typically with most oxidizers, you can get back into the water within 15 to 30 minutes at the most. Another thing that you may want to know is it can impact your pH. It might have a mildly acidic effect. So if you use it regularly, it is worth keeping track of your pH and alkalinity over time. It's not a dramatic shift usually, but it is worth knowing and keeping tabs on. You've probably seen those viral all-in-one pool products that claim you can virtually cut out all your other pool chemicals by adding a scoop or two every week. Many of those rely heavily on this same chemical, potassium peroxymonosulfate, as their main ingredient. They usually include other additives like copper, enzymes, and clarifiers depending on the brand, but the oxidizer is doing the heavy lifting. The problem isn't that they don't work. The problem is how they're marketed. An oxidizer is a tool. It's not a replacement for testing, balanced water, and maintaining proper sanitizer levels. So do you need to add this to your pool every week? Not necessarily. Honestly, probably not. Because like I already mentioned, it will have an effect on your water chemistry, especially if you're using it regularly when you don't really need to. Probably not going to be as problematic as those all-in-one products that have multiple chemicals in them. This is just an oxidizer. Personally, I don't think you should be adding anything to your pool just because the calendar says it's time. It should be based on what's actually happening in the water. You could potentially put an oxidizer like this in your pool every week or two if you really wanted to. The biggest drawback to that would be the cost of doing it when it's not necessary. It's definitely useful after pool parties, heavy bather loads, rain events, really anytime you introduce contaminants into the water. It's also very common in hot tubs where a small amount of water can get hit with a very high bather load with just a few people being in it. But if your water is clear and your chemistry is balanced, your chlorine demand is normal, you may not see much benefit from using it regularly. For me, I keep it on hand for when conditions call for it. It's another tool in a toolbox, not something I rely on daily, and not something to replace chlorine. Before I go, if you found this video helpful, then consider subscribing. This video isn't sponsored, but if you want to help support the channel, shopping through the links below in the description helps keep the channel going. And you can also join as a member for early access to the content. Thanks for watching, and remember, belly flops build character.